If you are a married believer trying to navigate this intimacy thing without shame, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because you are in the right place. I've never even said that out loud. When I went out, it would look like everything is okay. I would, be turned up all the way. Something about that funness, it disappears when you are by yourself. I'm in a marriage, a healthy marriage with a man who loves and adores his wife. I would feel like the walls were caving in on me. Purity culture taught you that your body was a problem to manage and that desire was dangerous. Nobody in purity told you that they were damaging your sexuality when they were teaching it. I get so excited when I talk about it, and who would not want to be rescued?
Welcome to the space where we tell our truth. Testimony, healing, breaking shame loose. Learning our bodies and walking by faith. Intimacy God's way, right here is the place. Sex ed for saints, Mondays at 6. We believe in the power of the story. Not just pain, but redemption and glory. Faith in the rhythm, hearts in the mix. Trust in educators. Mondays at 6, we're overcoming by the word of these testimonies. People getting free when we speak what's holy. Healing in our hearts, shame starts to split. Every story told, another chain gets stripped. Learning our bodies, learning His way. Intimacy and faith, walking day by day. This is where we heal, where the truth sticks. Sex ed for saints, Mondays at 6.
What's the lesson we will learn today? What's the lesson we will learn today? What's the lesson we will learn today on Sex Ed for Saints? It's time to party. What's up, beautiful people? It's your girl, Coach Tammy, in the building. And y'all, when I tell you, listen, if you have been rocking with me for quite some time, just look around. It looks a little different. Because why? Y'all, I am so excited because I am now in partnership, in network with BGTV Studios. And what does that mean? Well, the first thing that means is that, I was recording in my living room and I have kids. And so one of the things is while I'm recording, you're not going to be hearing a bunch of kids all the time. They be tapping to me on my lap, on my shoulder. And be like, Mommy, can I have something while I'm in the middle of recordings, y'all? That's what they used to do. Or I have a little dog, and my little dog, he used to come in and he just used to bark for every little thing. And so, being in partnership and being able to be a part of a network where they have equipment, they have the things. And so now I'm going to be able to present quality content, y'all. That I'm so excited about content, quality content, quality sound, all the things. I am just so excited for to be in this space. And so another thing that I'm excited about for being in partnership with this network is just having support. Y'all, listen, it is not easy to be out here and just recording all the time and not having support. And one of the things that you get when you're a part of a network is support. And one of the things that I love so much about BGT Network is their ability. They have prayer. They have this thing called Fire Dome where they are praying all the time. They're praying over the city and all of that. And so they're always doing the thing. And if you know me, you know I'm a prayer girl. I love to pray. And so to be in network and have support of people who are consistently praying all the time, I am so excited about all that. And when I tell you, I don't take this opportunity lightly, because one of the things that I realize is that when God places something in your hands, He's doing that for a specific reason. And for me, if I could just have a moment of transparency, this is something that's not easy for me to do, because I question sometimes, this thing that I'm doing, because I'm always hit with resistance. I'm always hit with people who are like, oh, you're not supposed to be doing that. Why are you talking about all the sex, right? And it takes a very special person to be able to have conversations like this. And I think that because of my experiences in life, and we'll get into that later, that God trusted me with the assignment that He was giving to me to be able to do it. And so I might have came kicking and screaming and doing all the things, but what the resistance of doing this has taught me, if it hasn't taught me anything else, is that, there's assignment attached to my experience. There's an assignment attached to the things that I have been through in the past. And the pushback lets you know that, when you are doing something that God has destined for you to do, because you know what you're doing is right. The enemy is always going to make sure that everybody knows it too, and he's going to send things your way to try and distract you from that assignment. And so, the pushback let me know that I was exactly walking in the direction that God was telling me to walk in. And so for those of you who do not know me, I am Coach Tammy. I am a sex educator. I am an intimacy and relationship coach. And I focus on all things God, all things sexuality, because I really want to reframe the thought process of individuals who have experienced things and, their understanding of sex. Because when you think about sex and all the things, it's such a beautiful experience. It's such a beautiful thing that God has created. But with anything that is beautiful that God has created, the enemy will always try and send something to distort that and make it into something that it's not. And one of the things that he has done as he's put it in this whole purity culture context, and it has created opportunities for people to not fully understand, the idea of sex and what that truly means, or not embrace it in the way that God desires. I believe that, the way that it is taught, the way that it is translated, it actually puts God inside of a box. And one of the things that I understand to be true about God is we can't put him in any type of box, because God is one of those, he can't fit into a box. He's so big that we limit him, but he can't limit himself, right? And so when you think about the concept of sex, the same God that you worship freely on a Sunday morning is the same God who's going to show up for you on a Monday or on a Tuesday or any other day during the week. And you can show up for him freely on Sunday, and you also need to be able to show up for him on any other day during the week as well, because we want to give God glory for every single thing, especially our sex life, especially our intimacy, right? That's one of the things that I've learned in this process. But listen, God doesn't want you to carry guilt. He doesn't want you to carry shame. He wants you to have a level of understanding. And I think that the goal here is to, give people an opportunity to understand God and what he has truly desired for his people as it relates to their sexual lives and the experiences that we have. Because I honestly believe that God wants us all to, enjoy and to embody and to explore as it relates to our sexual lives. And so, before I get into today's lesson, the lesson that we're going to learn today, I want to talk to you just to let you know a little bit about Tammy. Who's Tammy? Who's this girl? Who am I? And what gives me the privilege of even having the opportunity to be in front of you today? And so I want to talk to you a little bit about that. For those of you who are encountering me for the first time, I do have a testimony, right? Like, the reason why I am in this space, the reason why I am so passionate about it is because, I've had a very traumatic past. I have had a life with, so much toxic relationships and all the things. I didn't grow up with a healthy relationship with sexuality. And honestly, if I'm sitting here and I'm talking to you, you probably did not either, because many people have not. The difference is that when I learned how toxic my relationship was with sex, after, I came into Christ, I decided to do something about it. I could not sit there and, just allow me to feel miserable all the time or be lost in confusion and understanding exactly, what sexuality meant. I needed to, take a deep dive and truly, truly understand that thing. And so for the journey, I came into the space because of trauma. And from the time I was about 8 years old, I was molested. And then that escalated into other things. And then it just went into, even more. And the thing about it is, I've been through this experience with multiple people. And it got to the point where I was so tired of what was happening to me that I decided that I was going to take control. And my version of control was a little bit different, because many people, when they go through experiences, sometimes, you never really know how it's going to impact an individual. Sometimes they go to the extreme, and then sometimes they get shut right in. And for me, my version was, no, I'm going to take control, and I'm going to, make sure that I give it away before anybody has an opportunity to take it. And I think that's where the toxicity lied, is the fact that, I'm just going to give it away, because I really did not want people to take advantage. And my version of not allowing people to take advantage was just, let me just freely give. And that's because I did not recognize the value in what it was that I had. I did not understand, this thing that I was supposed to cherish. I had no language for that. And so helping me understand that process, at some point, I'm hanging out with friends and doing all the things that you do. And I was pretty young. I was pretty young, hanging out with friends, going out to places. And, on the exterior, when I went out, it would look like everything is okay. I would, be turned up all the way and, having fun. But something about that funness, it disappears when you are by yourself and you are all alone. And there were moments and times where, I would lay down on my bed and my pillow and I would just cry, because I would feel like the walls were caving in on me. And I did not understand where that came from. And that it stayed like that for a while, until it got to a point where I'm like, okay, God, I got to do something about this. Like, if you are even real, I need you to prove that to me. And he provided me an opportunity where he showed me exactly who it was that he is. And during that time, I was like, okay, God, I see you. I see what you're doing here. And I went through this whole process of just, saying, God, I want more of you. I want to understand you. I want to desire you. I want to do all the things, because if I'm going to go in, I'm going to go all the way in. And all the way in, I went all the way in. And one of the things that I learned during that process is I was like, okay, since I'm going all the way in here, I'm just going to focus on you. And so I focused on God. I went to church and I got into prayer, and I, got into serving, and I got into doing all the things that I'm supposed to do. And because I had such an active sexual past prior to that, I was like, I'm going to shut it all the way down, shut down every single thing. And I did just that. I didn't want to focus on it. If I had a feeling, if I had a desire, or if I had anything that didn't feel natural at the time, I would shut it completely down. And in that process of me shutting it down, I would say, okay, God, I want to learn about, the identity of God, and learn about who you are and what it is that I'm called to, and all the purpose and all the things. And I did just that. And, along the journey, I'm fast forwarding. And if you, stay in tune with this podcast, you're going to learn a whole lot, because, obviously I can't get all of my story in on one single episode. But, during the process of me going through this process, I came into a point where, God decided to bless me with a husband. And so I got married. I love my husband. He's a beautiful man of God. And, God has truly, blessed me with somebody who is the right person for me. And I say that because, when somebody has dealt with a level of trauma and they don't have language for the trauma that they have experienced, they need somebody who's going to be able to handle them with care. And my husband has been just that throughout that process. And so shout out to you, babe. But nonetheless, during that process, when I got married, now I'm in a position where I am absolutely able to do all the things that God is telling me to do, right? I'm in a marriage, a healthy marriage with a man who loves and adores his wife. And here I am not understanding what's wrong with me. I went through an entire process of, God, like it doesn't feel right. Something felt off. And I sat with God for a moment and I was like, God, like, I'm in a marriage. I don't understand why I am feeling convicted for, being in a marriage. So if this is something that you designed, if this is something that you desire for me to do, then you're going to have to show me something. You're going to have to help me understand why and where these convictions are coming from. And one of the beautiful things about God is that he always creates a space when you ask him. He will give you an answer. And that he did. He took me on this whole journey. He took me on a journey of understanding God and sex and sexuality and what that had to do with me. And it when I began learning, it was a process that took me quite some time. I'm still learning even to this day. But one of the beautiful things about that story is God revealed so much. He revealed so much. He clarified so many different things. He clarified calling and all the things. And I got so invested into it that God was like, go ahead and write a book. He said, go ahead and pen a book on your experience. And when he did that, I came out with my book. Let me see. Can y'all see that? Let me see. And this is my copy. Okay. Let me see if it came out with my book. It's called Hey God, Can I? It's an ABC guide about sex for married saints. And this book took me about 3 years plus to write. And, it's still a work in progress, but he allowed me the opportunity to be able to write this book. And it really helps people, believers, understand, some biblical principles and how, God gave instructions and how the marriage bed is. And the book is so loaded. There's so much information in there. It's really a tool. I call it the textbook for your marriage, because it's really a tool that, believers are able to use to help them understand, a practical biblical guide about sex. And so sex through his eyes, through God's eyes, let me say that. But the book was not just a project for me. It was an act of obedience, and, God gave it to me, and my desire was, God, whatever it is that you send my way, I want to be able to steward it well. And so, he gave me the instructions. I completed the book. And then as soon as the book was completed, he gave me some more instructions. And one of the things that he told me was to prepare the bride for the bridegroom. And listen, I've never even said that out loud. I've never said it out loud, because during that time I did not understand what that meant. I had to sit with that, because when I think about the weight of the assignment of helping people understand a part of them that they don't understand, that came with some weight. It came with some heavy burdens. And I was like, God, the only way that I could actually do that effectively is if you are helping me with the process. And so I enrolled in School 2819 Institute. Shout out to y'all. I absolutely love that institute. Where, I'm going to seminary and learning all about the Bible and sex and, just a full picture of God and Jesus and the story of Jesus and what it even means to be rescued as a bride. But helping you understand what that means for your marriage and what that means for your intimate life and how that correlates to God and all the things. I get so excited when I talk about it, because it's such a powerful story, and who would not want to be rescued? Yes, it's like so many people that I have spoken to, so many people who have wrestled and battled with so many different layers as it relates to intimacy, and to just understand and watch God move and see how he unfolds a lot of things. It's like, okay, God, this only could be you. It only could be you. And so this journey is going to be a continuous process for me. This journey is going to be a learning experience for me. And it's no wonder why God has positioned me on a platform like this. And it's because he wanted me to be able to be positioned to get his message out there, because his desire is for me to take it seriously. And I plan on doing just that. But one of the things that I recognize in that is, God is thorough, and, he's doing exactly what he does. And, sometimes you just gotta flow. You just gotta flow. And so I went from, this broken person with a horrible relationship with sex to this godly woman who has been assigned to the bride. And if that's not a testimony that qualifies me for this, and I don't know what is, right? And so now that you know a little bit about me, a little bit about Tammy, in little bits and pieces, you learned a little bit about Tammy. Today I want to talk about a little bit about identity and, sexuality. And anytime I, think about identity and sexuality, I think about God and his goodness. I think about, his design, because his design is where it begins. And so I just want to read a little bit of scripture, if that's okay with you. And I'm reading from Genesis 1:26 and 27. And let me go there real quick because I want to talk a little bit about it. We're not going to spend too much time because we'll be here all day, right? But 1 and 26 says, "And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. And so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female he created them." This is from the King James Version, and that I'm reading from today. But when I think about that, and I'm going back to it, and I'm thinking, man, let us make man in our image. This is where our identity is born. Our identity is born in this very same moment, in the image of God. We are created to be God's image. And then in verse 27, God goes on to say, and he says, listen, male and female, he created them. This is where sexuality enters the picture. And this also lets you know that sexuality is not an afterthought. God said this in the same breath, in the same statement. He said, let us make mankind in my image, in our image. And then I'm going to create male and female. He created them. Sexuality. When we think about this, identity is the foundation, and the sexuality is the expression of that. They came in the same verse. God never separated any of that. You were never meant to be separated from your identity and your sexuality, because that is what makes you whole. That's what makes you a whole being. And the issues that we have when we face that is that we live in a society where the views and the perception of sexuality has been very distorted. It has come to a point where people don't really understand sexuality. They understand identity, but they don't really understand sexuality, because the perception for sexuality has changed. And when you are distorted, when you have a very distorted viewpoint about sexuality, it causes you to question various things like, am I enough? Is my body good? You're asking questions like, can I even trust myself in this space? Is my desire evil? Like, the things that you are experiencing, you don't even know the difference of whether or not it's bad or good. And the issue that we've had is it's very easy to point out things like identity wounds. Yes. If somebody has grown up without their father or their mother, we can pinpoint and we can say, oh, I know that they're going to probably struggle with some type of identity issue because that presence was not there in their life. Yes. And sometimes that might look like, you can say, oh, their family is not there. And so that role figure was not there. And so we could say, okay, they might experience some feelings of rejection. They might experience some, something that feels like abandonment. Yes. They might experience some shame here and there without having those figures in their life. What I'm getting to is that sometimes, even though it might not be an easy fix, we can possibly recognize the issues that somebody might encounter when they are struggling with identity. But this is where it gets tricky because, many people have language for identity. If they are struggling with something that, and it's an identity issue, they've heard about it in the church. And, the church does not shy away from talking about identity at all. They do the altar calls with the healings and the conferences and, the find hers and the growth this and the growth that. And all the conferences are around something that has to do with identity. What's your identity? Your identity in God. And they're able to recognize it because they have the language for it. And so when you name something, you're able to start there with the healing. You know, you knew your father, you knew the words of your father, you knew the wounds that would come before that. And so, but what happened to sexuality? Yeah, it's like, you know, we have language for identity, but why did we go so quiet when it came to the sexuality part? Because when God said in the word that male and female, he created them, that was the sexuality part that was birth. A male was born, a female was born. All of these things happened, right? Or created. God created man, and then he, out of the rib of the man, he created a woman. And that came with some things, because in order to be a woman, you are birthed with particular things within that creation. That means you have hormones. That means you have, you know, all kind of things going on within your body, because God created your body to function, to carry children. Not just that, but to also be able to receive intimacy. Yes. And he created you with a role. He created you with all these different layers as a woman, as a man. And so when we talk about things like identity, it's so easy. But what about when I'm struggling with how my body feels? Like, how do I express that? What about if I'm having desires that I'm not really sure about? Who do I talk to about that? Because if the church has gone silent and the world has created something that is so loud, and everything that is spoken about in a way that takes all the glory away from God, then when I'm struggling with hormonal issues, or when I'm having some biological things going on within my body, when I'm feeling certain desires, or when I've experienced certain trauma, or when I've experienced, living my life very loudly, but now I want to go back in my shell, and now I want to go and serve God. I can chase after him for his identity, but what about the parts of me that doesn't want to talk because I don't have the language for it? Because you can't separate identity from sexuality. God did not do that. He created it together. Because you can't have an identity without having some form of sexuality. They intertwine. And so it doesn't look the same. And this is what creates shame. Yes, this is what creates guilt around intimacy. And when you are disconnected from your sexuality, you are also disconnected from your body, because it's your sexuality that keeps you together. And if you are suppressing everything it is that God has created within you, then there is a gap that you might not understand. But if you don't feel safe enough to have conversations with individuals to tell you about these different things, because you don't feel safe, because you've been taught that these things are so bad, then why would you do that? And so you remain quiet. And I think one of the damages that has been taught with when it comes to like things like purity-based teachings and things like that is, there has been a disservice, and I'm not trying to blame the church or anything like that. But there have been messages that have been completely incomplete. And nobody in purity told you that they were damaging your sexuality, when they were teaching it, because the goal was to protect it. And I don't want to make the assumption and having people think that, oh, purity is not good, because purity is an absolute beautiful thing. God absolutely wants you to stay pure for him, but it's the level of understanding to be able to get to understand what that even means through the lens of God. And that's what matters, because, purity culture taught you that your body was a problem to manage, and that desire was dangerous. And that sexuality was to be locked away until marriage. And then one day when you get married, that everything would be okay. And that's what purity taught. And so, you don't even have to experience trauma to know and understand that, hey, I've heard this. And so I'm being taught this. And so this means that I need to now suppress this. And so now you get married, and now all of a sudden the light switch is just supposed to pop on and you're supposed to automatically know what to do. And it does not happen that way. And so, if you grew up in that type of culture, if you grew up with trauma, if you grew up with a different level of understanding when it comes to sexuality, the goal is to provide some clarity and to help you understand that your sexuality is not a bad thing. It's absolutely not a bad thing. It is a God thing. It's something that God desires for you to do, because when you are confident about your sexuality, and we're going to talk a little bit about that on future episodes, but when you're confident, you just show up different. You show up in how you dress. You show up in how you receive compliments. You show up in how you set boundaries for yourself. You attract differently because you tolerate less. Yes. You show up in how you talk and how you see yourself. And understanding sexuality changes all of that. But you needed the language to be able to understand that that could happen, that these were the possibilities. And so, I'm not gonna, tell you that healing from these things is easy, because it's not. But I am gonna tell you that once you give something a name and you have language for it and you understand it differently, you will be able to identify and be able to separate it from the wounds that you have, so that you can actually take it to God and work on it. There is a thing that God wants you to do where he says, be renewed in the transforming of your mind. And you got to do that thing every single day. Right. And so I think that one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast is because I want to be able to provide language for people who are going through things, whether you're married, whether you're single. Sometimes, you just need to hear somebody say it, and then you need to go back into the word to confirm it, and then get language for yourself so that you can know the way forward. It's so important to have community, especially around the things that you don't understand. And so this is how you build your confidence. It's not about becoming somebody new. It's about returning to who God created you to be, so that you can live that out fearfully. Yes. And so before I let you go, I always want to talk to you about, sometimes we might be carrying burdens, but we don't have to, about what it is that we're experiencing. We can go to God and God will help us with the process. We just got to take it one step at a time, one day at a time, and understand identity and sexuality both together through the lens of God. And so, thank you for tuning in to this episode with me. This week, I just want you to ask yourself, sit with yourself. What is the earliest message that you've received with your body or desire? And ask yourself where that came from. And then take that to God. Because you are not created to be broken. You were created to be whole. And then life happened and something along the lines that changed that. But God is in the restoration business, and he is out here to save people, to rescue people, and to restore people from some of the things that they have experienced. And so I have thoroughly enjoyed this episode today. Y'all, this is my first one. I know I'm trying to wrap it up because, we got to get to it. But thank you for tuning in to the Sex Ed for Saints podcast. If you have enjoyed this episode, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share. And until next time, we're going to see you later. Bye.